And now I'd like to invite the Arnie Sutherland family to ring out our bell. Thank you. Welcome to our beloved sanctuary, as well as our digital sanctuary on Zoom. My name is Nancy Wilbur, and I'm a part of the worship team. And many thanks to Joel Neiditz, who is our camera point person today, and to Ruth Kahn, who is our Zoom usher. For those of you who are here in person, we ask that you keep your mask on at all times while indoors, although the worship leaders may take their masks off at the mic when distanced from others. People of all ages are welcome to move about in the sanctuary as they need to. Coloring sheets are available also at the entryway, at both entryways. Children's programming for elementary school age kids will begin today after our time for all ages. And our child care provider, Shannon, is available to accompany nursery-aged children to our nursery room in the parish hall at any time. This morning, we welcome Reverend Johanna Murphy as our guest minister. Reverend Joe serves as the executive director for UU Mass Action and had previously served as our director of religious education here at TPC. We're delighted to have you back again this morning. As we begin our service today, we acknowledge that our church was built on the ancestral, unceded lands of the Massachusetts people. We acknowledge the devastating legacy of settler colonialism and the continuing harm done to indigenous groups in our community and beyond. May our commitment to justice, equity, and compassion call us to take meaningful restorative action to honor and protect the land and all her people. We invite you to bring your perspectives, your doubts, and your beliefs, and all that is unique and wondrous about you to our service. In the spirit of love, all are welcome here. If you're new to Theodore Parker Church or are visiting today, we'd love to stay in touch. You're invited to fill out a connection card, which will give you an opportunity to sign up for our weekly updates and help us welcome you. A link to the connection card will be in the chat, as well as our contact info. Those joining us here in the sanctuary are encouraged to fill out a contact card that you'll find in your pews with the bright yellow envelope, bright yellow pamphlet. We'd like to offer a moment for those joining us remotely to greet those who are joining us in person. So AV folks, could you please put our sanctuary screen in gallery view so that we can see our off-site congregation? Folks joining us in Zoom, we can see you in the sanctuary now, so give us a wave if you like. And folks in the sanctuary, the camera is actually behind you, just below the clock. Give a big wave and a hello to those joining us remotely. It's wonderful to be together. We hope that each of you will find some comfort to carry with you over the week and some challenge for your thoughts. As always, we wish for each of you health, well-being, and a sense of peace. And now, today our pianist Yukiko Takagi is going to treat us to some mazurkas by Chopin. And the first one now is Mazurka Opus 17, number 2.
Good morning. Our opening words this morning are from Bell Hooks, the writer, the activist, the wonder. She tells us to be loving is to be open to grief, to be touched by sorrow, even when sorrow is unending. If you would now join me as in rising in body or in spirit in singing hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit.
Gather the Spirit, harvest the power. Our separate fires will kindle the flame. Witness the mystery of this hour. Our fires in the night appear all the same. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the spirit of heart and mind, owing our laden store, nurtured in love and conscience refined, with body and spirit united once more. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. Gather to celebrate once again. Gather the Spirit growing in all, drawn by the moon and fed by the sun. Winter to spring and summer to fall, the chorus of life resounding as one. Gather in peace, gather in thanks, gather in sympathy now and then. Gather in hope, compassion, and strength. gather to celebrate once again.
Our chalice lighting this morning you'll find in your program in English and in Spanish for our sister congregation in El Salvador. And the chalice will be lit this morning by some of our justice organizers who will be introduced later in an exciting justice prayer.
Ready? Are we ready? Okay. Good morning. Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its prayer. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another.
Now in Spanish, and I would hope that in addition to honoring the community of Plazuelas, that including these words in Spanish would also reflect our commitment to connect to the community in a meaningful way. El amor es el espíritu de esta iglesia y el servicio es nuestra oración. Esta es nuestra gran promesa, vivir juntos en paz, buscar la verdad con amor y ayudarnos los unos a los otros.
Thank you both for your reading those words this morning and for all of the important work you do in this community. So good morning. My name is Rose, and I have the honor of serving as this congregation's religious educator. This morning, I usually tell a story right now, which I'm sort of doing in a way, but I'm going to do something a little bit different this morning. With the help of our guest, Reverend Joe. And any kids who are here this morning, if you want to be a part of an activity we're leading for the whole congregation, you're welcome to come on up anytime, either while I'm talking or a little bit later. You'll see when the right moment is. Okay, so this morning, we're all talking about how important it is to feel our grief, our sadness, for everything that is wrong and unjust in this world, because feeling that sadness is a part of the process of making things better and acting for justice. I'm really grateful for this topic and know that it's one that I can always use a reminder about, particularly when it comes to the subject that we're going to be talking about in Children's Chapel today. So Children's Chapel is going to come right after I finish telling this story. And any kid who's here this morning is welcome to join me in the parish hall for that. So in Children's Chapel, we're going to be working together to write and decorate some holiday cards for Unitarian Universalists, for people in our larger faith community who are currently in prison. The specific people who we're writing to are members of the Church of the Larger Fellowship, which is a UU congregation without walls. And over half of their members, about 1,600 people, are currently incarcerated, meaning that they're in prison. I worked for the Church of the Larger Fellowship for a few years, in addition to this job, and I've gotten to know and care about a lot of the people who we'll be writing to. Prisons are really harsh and lonely places, where people are often punished for years and years, even if the harm that they may have caused isn't really addressed by locking them away. When I think about the people that I've come to know who are in prison and how hard it is to be there, separated from friends and family, especially during this time of year, I feel really sad. The actions that we can take, like writing holiday cards to people so that they know that we're thinking of them and that we care, Those actions are really important. But still, we know that those actions in themselves don't stop violent systems like incarceration from continuing. So I think it's important that we make space to feel our sadness, that there is violence and pain in the world. So Reverend Joe, I heard that you might have an activity that could help us all feel our sadness together, so that it doesn't feel as heavy as when we feel it alone. Yeah, you can use this thing for sure. Make sure it's on.
Nope.
Perfect.
Okay, now. All right, are there any kids who want to come help with this activity?
It's gonna be really fun, promise.
Great, great, great. Okay. So you're going to help me lead the whole congregation in something, but first I have a question for you. When you think about being sad, what do you think about? Does anything happen when you're sad?
What might you do when you're sad?
You might what? Oh, yeah. Yeah. What else? You hug your mom? Yeah. Something that makes me feel better. Oh, yeah. So they said things that when they feel sad, they want to hug their stuffed animals or hug their mom. And something that makes me feel better is sometimes I need to cry. And after crying, I feel better. Similar to like after you've hugged your mom, do you feel better? Yeah. Yeah, a little bit better. Okay. So what we're going to do is something that happens in our weather system. Our weather is that we have rain. And some people think of rain sometimes feels like tears. And it sometimes feels like the clouds have gathered all this water and then they need to drop it. They need to release it. So we're going to create a nice communal cry via a rainstorm. Now it's going to be a sort of slow rainstorm that starts out quietly. So first, I want you to show everyone rubbing your hands together, just like this. Yeah. How does that sound? It sound like rain is maybe coming? Okay, now we have a few slow plops, like, there we go. And then what usually happens? If it's gonna build, are there more plops? Yeah, let's give it some more plops. And a little bit more. And after the plops, we start to hear a little thunder. Oh, and even more thunder. Yeah. Oh, excellent thunder. Oh, and then the thunder starts to go away, and we hear a lot of our plops again. And then the plops slow down. And then it's just soft rain. Do you think we can do a whole round of that, you guys teaching the congregation without me coaching? Yeah? All right. Why don't you come right over here?
Thank you so much. That was great. I know I feel a little bit more, oh, yeah. It's all in my body now. Thank you. Great. With that, I'm going to invite Michael to start our children's benediction. And any kid who wants to join me for Children's Chapel, let's gather by this door over here. Thank you all.
For you shall go out in joy, for you shall go out in joy, and come back in peace, and come back in peace. Blessed be.
You will now rise in body and spirit to sing hymn number 391, Voice Still and Small.
Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear all singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years singing. Let's sing it one more time. Voice still and small, deep inside all, I hear you call, singing. In storm and rain, sorrow and pain, still will remain singing. Calming my fears, quenching my tears, through all the years singing.
The quote from Bell Hooks I named earlier tells us to be loving, to be open to grief, to be touched by sorrow, even sorrow that is unending. Let us breathe into this. Let us open our hearts. Let us imagine our hearts and imagine them growing and growing, letting not only sorrow in, but letting love in. Growing and growing, not only letting more love in, but more capacity to grieve, to give and receive. Let us breathe in and give. Let us breathe out and receive. Breathing in and out. Remembering that we are so loving. May all our prayers we have in our hearts today receive this love. May all the concerns and joys unsaid in our hearts receive this love. Let us all be received and let them be received with love. We share now in a time of quiet, followed by a musical meditation.
Thank you, Reverend Joe and Michael. Generosity is a spiritual practice in our Unitarian Universalist congregations. We give to remind ourselves how many gifts we have to offer. We give to remember that we are a part of something bigger than ourselves. We give because we believe in music and sacred space. We give with gratitude for all that we have been given and with the faith that together we have more than enough. Links to donate will be in the chat, or you can take a meditative moment writing out a check and sending it to the church after the service. Ushers will be coming around the sanctuary to collect an offering from those in the pews who wish to donate something more tangible. As Yukiko shares Mazurka Opus 33, number 1 by Chopin, an offering to sustain this congregation of memory and hope, will be gratefully received. Thank you.
In remote forests in Madagascar, there is an orchid that is somewhat star-shaped, a delicate branching of white pebbles called the star of the forest. They may look delicate, and one may think its name comes from its shape, but it is also the star of the forest because it grows in complete darkness. The orchid gets its nutrients from underground fungus, does not have chlorophyll for photosynthesis, but cuts through the forest dirt every so often to attract pollinators, such as ants. I loved reading about this orchid. I love knowing that there is thriving in darkness. This orchid is a reminder about the ability for life to survive and thrive in unexpected and possibly difficult places. Beautiful, delicate, thriving orchids that live happily and healthily, completely in the dark. I have been in need of the possibility that exists within thriving orchids as the days have gone quite short. And a year ago, I found myself as a leader of UMass Action, working alongside organizers on legislation, advocacy, and change in the areas of climate and environmental justice, indigenous justice, decarceration, immigrant, and economic justice. With the mission of organizing UUs to confront oppression, I think there is great possibility for all of us to thrive when we find ourselves in darkness. In these movement spaces doing this work, I find myself standing in that awkward spot of not being very hopeful, but having hope for the possibility of hope. I know that people have the capacity to do better even when these people do not act on it. When thinking about what blocks my ability to move from having hope in hope to just hope, I think about grief. I feel these days so many of us are wading in grief, thick seas of grief that may feel unending. I at first feel overwhelmed, but then I remember that the space grief carves and our abilities as humans to grieve and how important and needed that is. I believe that if we take the time and space to grieve, we have a greater capacity for joy, for delight, and we need this joy, this delight, to continue in these movement spaces and to remember why we fight. This past summer, Joni Mitchell, who is now 79, made a surprise guest appearance at the Newport Jazz Festival and sang Both Sides Now with Brandi Carlile. This is a beautiful, haunting, definitely sad-sounding song. And when I watched the video from the festival, I did not weep, I sobbed. I'm sure many of you have experienced songs, art, moments that feel that they are breaking you open in a good way, but is that grief-carving space that can make you cry. I think this song, for me, both in its melody and lyrics, about knowing life and actually realizing you don't know it at all, and that's okay, broke me open. Now, this is an experience of hearing music, of seeing art that is better felt when actually done rather than talked about. And I'm wondering how many people here know the song Both Sides Now by Joni Mitchell? Excellent. So I would love to try to sing it all together. I have lyrics over here if you need them that I can pass out. Yeah, and I will say, I haven't practiced this. I don't know it very well. I asked Michael to play it on the guitar this morning, so we could be crying for different reasons. But hopefully it's for beauty. Rose and flows of angel hair, and ice cream castles in the air, canyons everywhere, looked at clouds that way. Now they Thank you so much for that. That was beautiful and exceeded my expectations. Part of my sobbing at that moment was part beauty, part loving Joni Mitchell and seeing her still singing, and part of it at the time was I just needed to cry. I was reminded of the Adrienne Marie Brown quote, "Remember, you are water, of course you leave salt trails, of course you are crying." I think these tears are speaking to living in a time and a world that often doesn't honor or have space for grieving. We have lost spaces to grieve. Many of us still continue to see our families, and especially our coworkers, on screen, some at church. So much of our general space has become virtual, less catching someone crying in the bathroom, more faces going in and out of screens. There are less opportunities for people to just be present, to one another's grief. As an organizer, as part of UUMass Action, part of accepting grief, wading into it is necessary to staying in the work, to staying connected to the world. Not only do we need to grieve, we are grieving in the midst of so many losses and circumstances that persist, that continue. We are tired of making so many decisions that are not flippant decisions, but that relate to our survival. We are tired of making decisions about a pandemic that persists and continues to kill. We are tired of the lack of justice for Indigenous people. We are tired of war, old and new, of impending climate disaster. We are tired of living through uprisings and still seeing racism violently persist. We are tired of deportations continuing and the rampant injustices against the immigrant community that seem to be never ceasing. We are tired of fighting for a future that is often hard to see as a future of joy. We are tired. Of course we are crying. I cry all the time these days. I cry when I am in a meeting for ending solitary confinement, when I'm listening to stories of survivors of solitary confinement. I then cry at poems. I cry when I hear fellow ministers who are so anxious about our climate, but also so hopeful. I cry at songs. I cry when I talk about the numerous losses that we have all collectively incurred, the ones I have personally felt, the ones still to come. I let myself cry, and most times I feel somewhat better, or at least more attuned with reality. I feel a release, and then I feel more ready, more grounded in the world, more ready to wade through the grief and to wade through hope. In a recent conversation with an organizer, we talked about the fear we encounter when we try to organize. The fear of everything going up or already being in flames. The fear that it is already too late. We talked about how to move from this fear, leaving this place of fear so we can actually move. We talked about what it meant to move from this fear, and recognizing part of this move is seeing the new beginnings, the hope and possibilities that when systems, when we saw as normal changes, when it breaks down, when it ends, there's possibility, there's hope for new systems, new potential, new hope. Whether or not we are able to build new and better systems remains an unknown. But that possibility, the possibility that as our world shifts, there could be better systems and ways of being, is something I think needs to be felt more. We have to grieve and accept our tears, tears that are just part of us, an expression of our love for life and beauty. In an article about eco-anxiety entitled, "How Can I Stay Hopeful as the World Burns?" Aisha Mirza interviews Robin Wall Kimmerer, author of the beautiful book, braiding sweetgrass, indigenous wisdom, scientific knowledge, and the teaching of plants. Mirza asks Kimura how she stays hopeful, and she says, "The grief is heartbreaking, but what I try to do is to feel that deeply. We can't look away from it because to me, grief is that measure of how much we love the world. Grief can paralyze us. It can bring us to despair and hopelessness, but when we recognize that the pain we are feeling is ecological compassion, it's love for the world that is strong and fierce, and let us say, not on my watch." Kimura goes on to say, "I always ask myself and others, what do you love too much to lose? Commit to that. And know that it's our responsibility to pick that up and carry it through the narrows of climate change. That's what the world will look like on the other side." It is no joke to feel grief deeply, especially when there's so much to grieve. But I think it helps when we know that in part to grieve is to love. As Bell Hooks reminds us, to be loving is to be open to grief, to be touched by sorrow, even when sorrow is unending. Even if sorrow is unending, I think we can take comfort that so is our love. To be touched by sorrow is to know you love, and to love is sometimes to grieve. The Adrienne Marine Brown reading, the quote ends on, "Despite it all, we are excellent at loving." The heart is the front line in the fight to feel in a world of distraction. We know that death might be the only freedom, that your grief is a worthwhile use of your time, that your body will feel only as much as it is able to. The ones you grieve may be grieving you, that the sacred comes from limitations, that you are excellent at loving. Our broken hearts certainly have a lot of territory to cover, but I have hope and knowledge that our frontline hearts can cover it. I think it's going to take work, but not more than we can handle. To want to survive in of itself is a beautiful thing. To want to survive in a broken world is even more beautiful, and perhaps at its core, it is hope. I have found spaces to grieve, and I continue to grieve, to moving from meeting to meeting, from legislative action to legislative action, crafting and creating moments of joy and delight where there are none, and treasuring them when they just appear and pop on along. Let us nurture our longing to survive. Let us remember why we fight, and let us remember this by creating and finding joy. Let us find and enjoy the orchids that grow in complete darkness. Let us let ourselves cry and grieve, remembering that our pain is love and that we have always had more than enough of that. Of course we are crying. Of course you are crying. Let us let those tears flow as reminders of how deeply we are in love with this world. Before I end this sermon, I would like to do a justice prayer and blessing for this congregation. I know we have a lot of good justice workers, organizers, so I'm going to set up the blessing, but then if you are involved in justice work, somehow related to this congregation, I would love for you to stand up and introduce yourself and tell us what that work is. May the justice already happening in this church be blessed, be abundant and full. May it carry with it strength and sustainability, and may we hear about this justice work now. Would anyone like to talk briefly about their justice work? Can be very brief. Yes.
Good morning. I'm Helen Horrigan. And I know there are many of you out there doing long time work, longer than me probably. I have been involved in the Racial Justice Task Force, and happy to be part of that with many of you.
So I'm Allison Gottlieb, and I am the co-chair of the Social Action Committee, which has been a little bit, maybe I was going to say it's been sort of dormant, but partly because of the overwhelm of all that grief that we are experiencing. But we've been doing, I guess most recently trying to get people to get the vote out in Georgia and places like that, and I do a lot of the also connection with UU Mass Action, and I encourage everybody else to do that as well, lobby days and so forth.
I'm Kathy Ware, and I've done a lot of work fundraising for reproductive access.
Deborah Ferenz, I'm the other co-chair of the Social Action Committee. We've organized a whole bunch of us to participate in the Trans Pride March last summer, and that was fun and exciting. And I know actually from the Diana Diggs Memorial that a number of people have been active in the Justice for Palestinian effort, which I have done a little of, not anything very recent, and there's other things going on.
Hi, my name is Katie Ford, and I'm on the Right to Counsel task force, which helps try and raise awareness and get the legislature to finally pass and fund attorneys for folks facing eviction.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, I'm Carrie Turan. Oh, is this better? I'm Carrie Turan. I've worked with a lot of people on the Racial Justice Task Force Guiding Group and also the Widening the Circle Working Group.
Is there anyone on Zoom who would like to share? Okay. All right. Well, thank you all so much for sharing. I know sometimes we happen to work in isolation, and I hope that doing things like this, reminding ourselves of the justice work that's already happening, will energize us and connect us, reminding us that all oppression is interrelated and connected. Let this justice work that is already happening energize and inspire other justice work. Let the justice work that is yet to come also be bountiful and abundant and plenty and grounded in all that is love. Much gratitude and much hope for the future. Blessed be. If you would now join me in singing hymn number 128, For All That Is Our Life.
For all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad. For needs which others serve, for services we give, for work and its rewards, for hours of rest and love, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life. For sorrow we must bear, for failures, pain, and loss, for each new thing we learn, for fearful hours that pass, we come with praise and thanks. For all that is our life, for all that is our life, we sing our thanks and praise. For all life is a gift which we are called to use to build the common good and make our own days glad.
Thank you, Reverend Joe. A couple announcements time. So following the service, following the postlude, you're invited to come over to the parish hall for coffee hour just through the door to the side of the pulpit and in the next building. Come on over and enjoy what looks like to be a very plentiful coffee hour. Thank you to the organizers. And then come back over here at noon in the sanctuary for a presentation from our ministerial search committee, giving us an update on the progress that this hard-working team has made.
So for our closing words, I know I did a justice blessing, but now I'm going to do a blessing of the hands. So everyone will be doubly, triply blessed today. I invite you into a space of blessings, a blessing of your hands and of your frontline hearts. I invite you, as you're willing or able, to hold your hands up, or perhaps open them to rest on your laps. Blessings on all these hands, apart in physical space, some here, some on Zoom, but together in worship, together in spirit. Bless these hands that know grief, that feel and track heartbeats. Blessings on these hands that are called to the labors of love, the labors of liberation, that know miracles despite it all. Bless the hands that organize, that pray, that cook, that help with programming, clean, sew, paint. Bless the hands that dance. Bless the hands that together do the work that needs to be done. May these hands receive as well as give. May they continue to unite with all other hands. And may we all be held in the blessing that is hands coming together in love, in grief, in gratitude. Amen and blessed be.